They say strange things happen after midnight, that the world changes in ways most people never notice, shifting into something darker. I used to think that was just superstition, the kind of thing people say to spook themselves, like telling ghost stories around a campfire. But after working the night shift at this gas station for over a year, I can tell you one thing for certain. The people, or things, that show up after midnight, they don't always belong here. It started small, a flicker in the corner of my eye, a feeling of being watched. But as the weeks went by, the encounters became harder to explain. And then there was him. My gas station isn't anything special. It's the kind of place you only stop at when you're out of options, too tired to keep driving, too lost to find anywhere else. We sit at the very edge of town, past the last streetlight, surrounded by miles of empty road. During the day, we get the usual crowd, truckers, locals, the occasional family on a road trip. But once the sun sets, everything changes. The parking lot always seems too dark, even under the buzzing floodlights. The glass doors slide open on their own, even when no one is near them. Sometimes, the security cameras flicker and cut to static right when I need them the most. And then there are the customers, if you can even call them that. They don't always act right. Some of them just stand there, staring at the shelves without blinking. Others walk in, look around like they're lost, and then leave without buying anything. And then, there are the repeat visitors. The ones who come in at the same time every night, buy the same item, and say the same thing word for word. At first, I brushed it off. Maybe it was just late-night exhaustion playing tricks on me. Maybe I was letting my imagination get the better of me. Then one night, I met him, and I realized this wasn't my imagination. This gas station is different, and I'm not alone in here at night. It was a Tuesday. I remember because the Tuesday night shift was always the worst. No weekend travelers, no late-night rush. Just an endless stretch of silence, broken only by the occasional passing car. That night, I had just finished restocking the drinks cooler when the chime over the door rang. A man walked in. Something about him felt off, but I couldn't put my finger on why. He looked normal enough, tall, thin, dressed in a worn-out brown jacket with the collar turned up. He had short, dark hair, neatly combed. But it was his eyes that sent a chill down my spine. They weren't right. Too dark. Too hollow. Like staring into a void. He walked straight to the counter, without looking around, without hesitation. Then, without saying a word, he reached into his pocket and placed exact change for gas on the counter. Not a penny more. Not a penny less. I waited for him to speak. He didn't. Pump number? I asked. No response. I glanced up. He was staring at me. Unblinking, unmoving. His face had no expression, like a wax figure pretending to be human. I cleared my throat. Sir. Still nothing. His hand twitched slightly, fingers drumming against the counter in an awkward, mechanical rhythm, like he was trying to mimic normal human behavior, but didn't quite know how. I swallowed hard and rang up the sale, just to get him out of there. As soon as I handed him the receipt, he turned on his heel and walked toward the door. That's when I noticed something strange. His shoes. They weren't wet. It had been pouring rain for the past hour. Big, heavy sheets of rain that left puddles all over the parking lot. But his shoes were completely dry, like he had just stepped in from somewhere else. A place where the rain couldn't touch him. That was unsettling enough. But then I saw his car. It was an old black sedan, completely unremarkable, except for one thing. No license plate. Not on the front. Not on the back. Just an empty space where the plate should have been. I glanced back at the man. He had already reached the door. But something made me hesitate. Something deep in my gut screamed at me not to look away. The door slid open. I blinked. He was gone. Not walking away. Not getting into his car. Just gone. I rushed to the window, scanning the lot. The car was still there, sitting at pump 3. But the man? No trace. No footprints. No sign that he had ever existed. The gas pump never turned on. I stared at the empty lot for a long time, heart pounding. Then, as if on cue, the security monitor behind the counter flickered and cut to static. I felt sick, and I wasn't the only one who noticed something was wrong. A few minutes later, the store phone rang. I jumped. It was rare to get calls this late, Most people who needed something just came inside. I hesitated before picking up. Hello. Static. Then, a voice, barely a whisper. Don't talk to them. Click. The line went dead. I held the phone in my ear for a long time, my pulse hammering. The static still rang in my ears, an eerie hum that felt like it was inside my skull. I turned back toward the parking lot. The car was still there, sitting, waiting. I couldn't bring myself to go outside and check. Instead, I did what I always did when something felt wrong. I waited, and eventually, the car disappeared, without anyone getting in or out. After the encounter with the man in the brown jacket, I started paying closer attention to my customers. At first, I thought I was just being paranoid. The mind plays tricks on you when you're alone at night. But the more I watched, the more I noticed something strange. Some of the same people kept coming back. Not unusual for a gas station, right? Maybe locals who just had weird schedules. That's what I told myself at first. But these people weren't normal. They never blinked. Ever. Their expressions never changed. They spoke in flat, emotionless voices, always asking for the same thing. Same words, same tone, every single time. Like they were practicing how to be human. There was one in particular. A woman. She always showed up around 3 a.m. Medium height, long black hair, wearing the same red hoodie every night. She'd walk straight to the fridge, grab a bottle of water, set exact change on the counter, and say, "Water, please." No greeting, no small talk, no eye contact, just those two words. At first, I figured she was just socially awkward. But then I noticed something. She never drank the water. One night, after she left, I checked the security footage. She walked out to the parking lot, stood by the curb, and just held the bottle. For hours. Didn't drink it. Didn't leave. Just stood there. At 5 a.m., right before the morning rush, she walked back to the store, placed the unopened bottle back in the fridge, and left. Like she had never been there at all. And the next night, she did it again. And again. And again. Same bottle. Same routine. Same exact motion every time, as if she was a recording on a loop. That's when I knew, whatever was coming into my store at night, they weren't people. One night, about a week after I first noticed the repeat visitors, I was taking out the trash when I saw something standing in the parking lot. At first, I thought it was just another late-night customer. A man, dressed in dark clothes, standing near the edge of the lot, just outside the reach of the streetlight. But something about the way he stood there froze me in place. He wasn't moving, not shifting his weight, not breathing, just standing there, watching. I couldn't see his face, but I could feel his stare. It was like the weight of his gaze was pressing down on me, making the air thick, making my skin crawl. I should have gone inside. I knew I should have gone inside, but I didn't. Instead, I stepped forward, squinting into the dark. "Sir," my voice came out shaky. "Do you need something?" No response. I swallowed hard and took another step forward. And that's when the streetlight flickered. For less than a second, the parking lot went completely black. And when the light came back on, he was closer, at least 10 feet closer. But I never saw him move. My heart slammed against my ribs. Every instinct in my body screamed, "Get inside." I staggered back, fumbling for the door handle. But before I could reach it, the light flickered again. And this time, he was right in front of me, less than 5 feet away. That's when I saw his face, or at least what should have been a face. There was nothing there. No eyes, no mouth, no nose, just smooth, featureless skin, like a mannequin. The air around me turned ice cold. My fingers went numb. My legs felt locked in place, like I was sinking into the pavement. Then he moved. Not a step, not a shift. Just there 1 second, gone the next. Like he had never existed. I didn't sleep the next day. As soon as the morning shift came in, I went straight to the back office and pulled up the security footage. I had to know if I imagined it, if my mind was finally cracking under the pressure of these late-night shifts. I rewound to the moment I saw him. At first, it looked normal, just me taking out the trash. Then I saw it. The man was there, just like I remembered, but the way he appeared. One frame, empty lot. The next frame, he was there. No transition, no movement, just there. And when the light flickered, same thing. One frame, him standing far away. Next frame, 10 feet closer. Next frame, right in front of me. Then gone, like he had never existed at all. I felt sick. My stomach twisted into knots. And then I saw the worst part. When a man disappeared, the footage didn't just cut to me running inside. There was another frame in between. 1 second of static. And in that static, a face. Not the featureless mannequin face I saw outside. No, this was something else. A mouth, twisted into a grin too wide for a human face. Eyes, black pits, endless, staring straight into the camera. And behind it, more. Dozens of them, standing just beyond the parking lot, just outside the reach of the light. Watching, waiting. And in the final frame, before the footage cut back to normal, they all took a step forward. By the time I started my next shift, I had convinced myself I was done. Done with the night shift. Done with this place. Done with whatever the hell was happening here. But quitting wasn't that easy. I needed the money, and jobs weren't exactly falling out of the sky. So I told myself I'd just keep my head down, do my hours, and ignore whatever was going on. Then, I made a mistake. I started digging into the gas station's history. I thought maybe it would explain what I've been seeing, why the customers weren't right, why the cameras glitched, why my skin crawled every time I stepped outside after midnight. I didn't expect to find anything, but I was wrong. Because this gas station, it wasn't supposed to exist. I found an old property record in the back office. Faded papers, stacked in a dusty filing cabinet that looked like it hadn't been opened in years. According to the documents, our gas station was built in 1992. That didn't seem strange until I checked the blueprints. Because the same gas station had been built before, in 1955, and in 1968, and in 1981. The exact same building, same layout, same location. But every single time, something happened. The 1955 station burned down. The clerk on duty, never found. The 1968 station shut down after reports of missing people who were last seen stopping for gas. The 1981 station, demolished after the entire night shift staff vanished. No bodies, no evidence, just gone. And every single time, the station was rebuilt. Same structure, same spot, same eerie glow of those damn fluorescent lights. Like it was meant to be here. Or worse, like something wanted it here. I was already on edge that night. But when the clock hit 3 a.m., I saw something that made my blood run cold. The woman in the red hoodie was back. Same routine. Walked in, grabbed a bottle of water, set exact change on the counter. But this time, she didn't leave. She just stood there, staring at me, waiting. Something else. I asked, my voice unsteady. She tilted her head, like a confused animal. Then, for the first time in all the nights I'd seen her, she blinked. Once. Slowly. And then she spoke. Not in a flat, robotic tone. Not like a recording on a loop. This time, her voice was wrong. Too deep. Too layered. Like more than one person was speaking at once. And what she said, you shouldn't have looked. A chill shot down my spine. What? My voice barely came out. She took a step closer. Her lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. We know you see us. The temperature in the room plummeted. My breath turned to fog. The buzzing of the fluorescent lights hummed louder. Then, all at once, the sound cut out. No humming. No wind outside. No distant highway noises. Just a thick, heavy silence. And then, the lights went out. Darkness swallowed the store. For a second, I thought the power had gone out. But the register was still on. My phone screen still glowed in my pocket. The only thing not working was the lights. And in the dark, I heard movement. Not footsteps. Not breathing. Something else. Something sliding. Something shifting. Like bodies moving in unnatural ways. My fingers scrambled for the flashlight under the counter. The second I switched it on, I aimed it toward the front of the store. She was gone, but she hadn't left. I felt her. Felt something watching me. Not just one thing. Many. I pointed the flashlight toward the shelves, the fridges, the corners of the store. Nothing. Then, slowly, I turned it toward the front windows. And my heart stopped. Because the parking lot wasn't empty anymore. There were people standing there. Dozens. All lined up in the dark, staring through the glass. Their faces were wrong. Eyes too wide. Mouths slightly open. Skin too smooth. They weren't blinking. They weren't moving. Just watching. The flashlight flickered. And when the beam returned, they were closer. No footsteps. No motion. Just closer. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't move. Then, right outside the glass, one of them smiled. Not a normal smile. A grin that split their face in half. And in a voice that sounded like all of them speaking at once, they whispered, "You see us now." The lights blasted back on. And when I looked outside, they were gone. After that night, everything changed. I told myself I was done. For real this time. I didn't care about rent. I didn't care about my bank account. I didn't care about explaining myself to my boss. I just wanted out. But then I got a text message from an unknown number. It was only 3 words. Stay. Watch. Learn. No number. No contact name. Just those 3 words glowing on my screen. I should have ignored it. But deep down I knew I wasn't allowed to leave. Not yet. And that's when they started coming inside. The next night, I walked into my shift like I was stepping into a war zone. Every instinct told me I shouldn't be here, that I needed to run. But I couldn't. I could feel them watching. Every time I glanced at the security monitors, I caught glimpses. A flicker of movement near the pumps. A shape standing just outside the camera's frame. And then, at exactly 3:33 a.m., the door slid open. I froze. Because it wasn't a normal customer. It was her. The woman in the red hoodie. The one who always bought water. Only now, she wasn't moving. She was standing in the doorway, motionless, staring. The automatic door stayed open. The sensor should have closed it after a few seconds, but it didn't. It was like the store itself was holding its breath. I swallowed hard. "You need something?" She didn't answer. Didn't blink. Didn't breathe. Then, slowly she stepped inside. I felt my stomach drop. Because up until now, these things, whatever they were, they always stayed outside. They weren't supposed to come in. But tonight, they were breaking the rules. She walked past the aisles, disappearing behind the shelves. I knew I should have followed her. Should have told her to leave. But something inside me whispered, "Do not go after her." So I stayed behind the counter, pretending I was busy checking inventory. That's when the door opened again. A man walked in. Tall. Wearing a gray suit. His face was familiar. At first, I thought maybe he was a regular. Someone who had passed through before. But then I realized he looked exactly like someone I'd seen on a missing persons flyer. Same blank stare. Same hollow expression. Except something was off. His mouth. It was stretched into a grin. Too wide. Too many teeth. He walked up to the counter. Not looking at me. Looking past me. Like he was watching something behind me. I turned. Nothing there. When I looked back, he was closer. I didn't see him move. Didn't hear a single step. But now he was leaning forward, his face inches from mine. And then he spoke. "Do you see us now?" I couldn't answer. I couldn't move. Every muscle in my body locked up. I reached for the panic button under the counter, but before I could press it, the security monitor glitched. The screen froze. Then, in a burst of static, the cameras switched. Not to the store. Not to the parking lot. But to a feed I didn't recognize. Somewhere dark. Somewhere underground. Rows of people standing perfectly still, lined up like mannequins. Their eyes were open. Their mouths were moving. But there was no sound. And then, all at once, they turned to look at the camera, like they knew I was watching. I scrambled to shut off the screen. My hand was shaking. And when I looked up, the man in the suit was gone. But I wasn't alone. I wasn't sure how long I stood there. Maybe a minute. Maybe an hour. But eventually, the automatic door slid open again. My breath caught. I expected another one of them to walk in. Another empty-eyed figure. Another thing that shouldn't exist. But instead, it was someone I knew. Tom. The guy who worked the morning shift. He frowned at me. "Dude, why are all the lights off?" I blinked. Looked around. The store was normal again. The shelves were stocked. The security monitors were back to their regular feeds. No sign of the woman in red. No sign of the man with too many teeth. Had all been in my head. Tom sighed, rubbing his eyes. "You look like hell. You okay?" I hesitated. I wanted to tell him everything. Wanted to grab him and make him understand. But then, as he turned toward the fridge I saw something that stopped me cold. A bottle of water, sitting right where she always put it, unopened, waiting. And for the first time, I noticed something I hadn't before. The expiration date, 1955, the year the first station was built. And in that moment, I knew this wasn't over. It had never been over, and they weren't done with me yet. After that night, I couldn't pretend anymore. I wasn't imagining this. The people outside weren't people. The things that came inside weren't customers. And worst of all, they knew I knew. Every night, the air felt heavier. The silence felt thicker. The customers seemed less human. And there was one place, one spot in the entire gas station that had always felt wrong. The back room. It wasn't anything special, just a storage area where we kept extra inventory. But there was a door, one I had never seen open. It had no label, no handle, just a plain steel surface, bolted shut. At least, I thought it was bolted shut, until the night I saw someone come out of it. It was around 3:45 a.m. The store was empty. No strange customers. No shadowy figures in the parking lot. Just me, restocking the shelves, trying to pretend everything was normal. Then I heard it. A metallic click. The sound of a door unlocking. I froze, turned slowly, and watched as the backroom door swung open. A man stepped out. Tall, dressed in my uniform. His face, my face. I felt my blood turn to ice. He looked exactly like me. Same eyes, same hair, same build. But there was something off. His expression was wrong. Too neutral. Too blank. Like he had been practicing looking human, but hadn't quite gotten it right. We stared at each other. Then he smiled. A slow, unnatural grin that stretched too wide. And in my own voice, he said, "You need to leave." I couldn't breathe. Couldn't move. I wanted to ask, "Who are you? Where did you come from? What's behind that door?" But I was too scared to speak. Then he took a step forward, and something inside me snapped. I bolted, ran past him, past the aisles, past the counter, straight to the exit. But when I grabbed the handle, the door didn't open. I yanked, pulled, slammed my fist against the glass. The parking lot was still there, the highway beyond it, the streetlights, the pumps. But something was wrong. Everything outside looked off, like a painting of a gas station. Flat, fake. I turned back. The thing wearing my face was still standing in the same spot, watching me. And then he spoke again. "You need to leave." Only this time, it wasn't a warning. It was a threat. I had no choice. I ran for the back room, straight for the open door. If the front door wouldn't let me out, maybe, just maybe, this one would. The air inside was cold. Too cold, like stepping into a meat locker. The hallway beyond it wasn't part of the gas station. It was too long, too dark, too old. The walls weren't drywall. They were stone. The floor wasn't tile. It was dirt. And the smell, rotting wood and something else. Something worse. I took a step inside, then another. And behind me, the door slammed shut. I should have turned back. Should have banged on the door. Should have screamed for help. But I knew, deep down, there was no turning back. The hallway stretched forward into darkness. No lights, no sound, only a faint buzzing, like the hum of fluorescent bulbs, but deeper, lower, like it was coming from inside the walls. I kept walking. The hall seemed endless. The air grew heavier. My ears rang. And then, I saw something on the wall, a scratched-up metal sign. I wiped away the dust, revealing the words beneath it. First station, 1955. I felt my stomach drop. The first station, the one that burned down, had ever really burned, or had it been swallowed? The buzzing grew louder. The walls shuddered. And ahead of me, the darkness moved. Not a shadow, not a trick of the light. Something else. Something alive. Then, I heard the voice. Not a whisper, not an echo, but a chorus. Hundreds of voices, layered on top of each other. And all of them were saying the same thing. "You should not be here." I ran. I ran like hell. Down the endless hallway, through the choking darkness, toward the only thing I could see. A single metal door. Faint light spilled through the edges. I didn't hesitate. I grabbed the handle, twisted, pulled, and the moment it swung open, I was back. I stumbled into the gas station. The normal gas station. Shelves stocked. Fridges humming. Security monitors working. The clock on the register blinked 4:17 a.m. The store looked exactly as it should. Except for one thing. I wasn't alone. A man stood by the counter. Tall. Wearing a gray suit. His back was turned to me. I swallowed hard. Sir. My voice shook. Slowly, he turned. And when I saw his face, I nearly screamed. Because it was me. Not the man from before. Not a copy. It was me. The real me. He looked at me with tired, sunken eyes. Then, in a weak, broken voice, he said, "You should have left when you had the chance." I stood frozen behind the counter, staring at myself. Same face. Same uniform. Same exhausted expression. But the look in his eyes, that wasn't me. There was something else behind them. Something old. Something tired. Something that had seen too much. His lips parted like he wanted to say something. And when he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse. "You should have left when you had the chance." My throat went dry. What does that mean? He blinked. Slowly. Then, without another word, he turned and walked away. Through the aisles. Past the fridges. Toward the back room. I wanted to stop him. To grab him. To demand answers. But before I could even move, he opened the door and stepped inside. And just like that, he was gone. I don't know how long I stood there, staring at the empty space where the other me had disappeared. At some point, the automatic doors slid open. The early morning rush had begun. The world was normal again. Like nothing had ever happened. Like none of it was real. But I knew better. So the first thing I did when my shift ended, I checked the security footage. I needed proof. Needed to see that I hadn't just imagined it all. I rewound the cameras to 4:17 a.m. The exact moment I had stumbled out of that hallway. I watched as my other self stood at the counter. Watched as he turned and walked away. Watched as he opened the backroom door. But then, the footage glitched. Just for a second. A flicker of static. And when it cleared, the backroom door, it was still closed. Like it had never been opened at all. And the other me? Gone. I quit that morning. Walked straight to my manager's office. Told him I was done. I expected him to ask why. Expected him to at least pretend to care. But he didn't even blink. Just nodded, handed me my last paycheck and said, it was only a matter of time. I wanted to ask what he meant. Wanted to demand why he wasn't surprised. But before I could, he glanced at the security monitor. Then, in a flat, tired voice, he said, "You should go. While you still can." That was all I needed to hear. I left the gas station. I drove home. I told myself I was free. And for a while, I believed it. That night, I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that none of it had been real. But I couldn't sleep. Because in the darkness, I felt watched. Then, at exactly 3:33 a.m., my phone buzzed. A text. From an unknown number. 3 words. "Come back. Now." I ignored it. Turned off my phone. Told myself it was some sick joke. But then, at 3:34 a.m., another text. "You are not supposed to leave." A chill ran down my spine. I sat up, heart pounding. And then, a knock. At my door. Not loud. Not forceful. Just waiting. My stomach twisted. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Another knock. "We know you're in there." The voice was wrong. It sounded like me. I grabbed my phone. Opened the camera app. Turned on the front door security cam. The screen loaded. And what I saw, my blood went cold. There were people standing outside. Not just one. Not just two. A dozen. All of them staring at my door. All of them wearing my face. I bit down on a scream. Shut my phone off. I didn't look out the window. Didn't check the peephole. I just sat there. Waiting. The knocks kept coming. Slow. Rhythmic. Until, finally, they stopped. And when I finally dared to check the security cam again, they were gone. But deep down I knew. This wasn't over. I didn't sleep. I didn't move. I just waited for morning. And at exactly 6 a.m., my phone buzzed one last time. I hesitated. Then, slowly I picked it up. A final text. One last message. "You left. But we are still here." I stared at the screen. Fingers trembling. Then, before I could stop myself, I texted back. "Who are you?" The reply came instantly. "We are you." I didn't go outside that day. I barely moved. I just sat there, staring at my phone, at the message that refused to disappear from my screen. We are you. I should have deleted it. Should have blocked the number. Should have burned my phone and left town without looking back. But I didn't, because no matter how much I tried to ignore it, one thought kept clawing at my mind. This isn't over. And deep down, I knew it won't be over until I go back. I spent the entire day trying to talk myself out of it. Try to pretend that if I just ignored the messages, ignored the knocks, ignored the things I'd seen, they would go away. But when the sun began to set, the air in my apartment changed. I can't explain it. The walls felt closer. The shadows stretched longer. The silence turned thicker. And somewhere, just beyond my hearing, I could swear I heard breathing. So at exactly 11:45 p.m., I grabbed my keys, got into my car, and I drove back to the gas station, back to where it all started. The drive felt longer than usual. The highway stretched endlessly, the darkness pressing against my headlights like a living thing. And the gas station? It looked wrong. From the moment I pulled into the lot, I knew something had changed. The lights were on, but the windows were dark. The sign flickered too slow, like it was struggling to stay lit. And the worst part, there were cars in the lot. Not just one or two, dozens, lined up in neat rows. Empty, waiting. I hesitated. Every muscle in my body screamed at me to turn around, to leave. But then my phone buzzed. Another text. Come inside. I swallowed hard, got out of the car, and stepped toward the door. The automatic doors didn't open. Not at first. For a long, terrifying moment, I just stood there, waiting, unsure of whether I should knock or just run. Then, a loud beep. The door slid open, and inside, the store was full. I nearly collapsed right there. Because for the first time in all my nights working here, the gas station wasn't empty. There were people, rows and rows of them, standing in the aisles, motionless, silent, not looking at me, not blinking, just waiting. A lump formed in my throat. Something was wrong. None of them were shopping. None of them were moving. And then, as I stepped forward, I noticed their faces. My stomach twisted, because they weren't people. They were me. Every single one of them, wearing my uniform, standing perfectly still. And at the very back of the store, behind the counter, one of them smiled. I took a shaky breath. I wanted to turn around, wanted to leave, but something held me in place. Then, the one behind the counter, the one wearing my face, spoke. You came back. His voice was mine, the exact same, the exact tone. I swallowed. What do you want? He tilted his head. Then, the other versions of me, the ones in the aisles, spoke in unison. We have been waiting for you. My heart pounded. The air felt thick. My limbs were heavy, like the store itself was pulling me deeper inside. I shook my head. No, I'm not. But then the lights flickered, and the one behind the counter whispered, You have to choose. The moment he spoke, the gas station changed. The aisles twisted, stretching longer than they should. The fridges buzzed, glowing too bright. The windows darkened, showing nothing but endless blackness outside. And the doors? They were gone. I turned back, heart racing. There was nothing but more aisles. More shelves. More versions of me. I was trapped. And the one behind the counter, the one who spoke first, tilted his head again. Then, slowly he raised a hand and pointed to the back room, to the door, the one that had never opened, the one I had seen someone walk out of, the one that wasn't supposed to exist. You have to choose, he said again. I licked my lips. Choose what? He smiled. And then, the lights cut out. I don't know what happened next. I don't know how long I was in there. The next thing I remember, I was waking up in my car. The sun was rising. The gas station was empty, like nothing had ever happened. I checked my phone. One new text. My hand shook as I opened it. You chose wrong. I felt my stomach drop. Then, before I could process it, another text. Try again tomorrow. I dropped the phone. I turned the key in the ignition, my fingers white-knuckled on the wheel. And I drove. Drove away from that cursed place. Drove until I ran out of gas. Drove until I was sure I was safe. But deep down, I knew, this isn't over. And tomorrow night, I'll be back. I don't remember driving home. I don't remember anything after I saw that last text. All I know is that when I woke up, I wasn't in my apartment. At first, I thought I was dreaming. I was lying in bed, my bed. The room looked like mine. Same furniture, same posters, same half-empty cup of water on the nightstand. But something felt wrong. The air smelled off, like dust and something faintly metallic. The light coming through the window was too dim, like the sun wasn't shining quite right. And the silence, too thick, too empty. I sat up slowly, my heart pounding. Then I saw my phone sitting next to me. One new text message. Do you see it yet? I swallowed hard, took a deep breath. Then, cautiously, I turned toward the window, and my stomach dropped. Because outside, it wasn't my neighborhood. The street looked the same. The houses were in the right spots. The sidewalks, the trees, even the street signs, all exactly where they should be. But the colors were wrong. Everything had this faded, washed-out look, like an old photograph left in the sun too long. The trees didn't move. No wind, no rustling leaves. They just stood there, stiff and lifeless. And the sky, it was gray, not cloudy, not stormy, just flat, uniform gray, stretching endlessly in every direction. No sun, no clouds, no life. I pulled my phone closer, fingers shaking, and typed a reply. Where am I? The response came instantly. Home. I grabbed my jacket and rushed to the front door. I had to get outside. Had to see if anything else was wrong. I flung the door open and immediately stopped cold. The street was full of people, standing in their driveways, standing on the sidewalks, just standing, motionless, facing my house. And I recognized them. They were my neighbors. The old man who walked his dog every morning. The couple who always left for work at the same time. The kids who rode their bikes past my window. But something was off. Their faces were blank, expressionless, their mouths slightly open, like they were caught mid-sentence. Their eyes, too wide, and they weren't blinking. They weren't moving. They were just staring at me. Then, as I stepped onto the porch, they all took a step forward. My breath hitched. I turned, slammed the door shut, locked it, bolted it, pressed my back against it, heart pounding. I didn't know what to do, didn't know where to go. Then, a knock, soft, gentle, too calm. Then another, slow, rhythmic, perfectly timed. I clenched my fists. Then my phone buzzed. Another text. They want you to come outside. I squeezed my eyes shut, took a shuddering breath. Then I typed back. Who are you? For the first time, there was a pause. And then a reply. You already know. I looked around the house, trying to think. I couldn't stay here, couldn't go outside. And then I noticed something. The back door. It was open, just a crack, like someone had been inside and left it for me. I swallowed hard. Then, slowly I walked toward it. The air in the house felt thick. The walls seemed closer. The buzzing noise I had heard at the gas station. It was here too, growing louder. I reached for the door handle, paused, and in that moment, I knew I was making a choice. If I stepped outside, I was either escaping or going exactly where they wanted me to. I exhaled. Then, before I could change my mind, I stepped through the door. I expected to step into my backyard, expected grass, a fence, something familiar. But instead, I was standing in the gas station parking lot. The cars were still there, still empty, still waiting. The sign was still flickering. And the automatic doors, they slid open, like they had been expecting me. I took a shaky step forward, then another. The second I passed through the doors, the air changed. The shelves weren't stocked. The fridges were dark. The security monitors were blank. And at the back of the store, the backroom door was open, and someone was standing in front of it, waiting for me. It was me. Again. Not the same one as before. A different version. His uniform was cleaner. His posture straighter. His eyes were sharper. Like he had been here longer than I had. Like he knew more than I did. And in that calm, tired voice, he said, "You finally made it." I didn't move. Didn't speak. Then he raised his hand, holding something out to me. A phone. My phone. I took it, hesitating. The screen was already lit. One final text. From the same unknown number. And it only said one thing. Now it's your turn. The store shuttered. The air hummed. And deep inside me, something shifted. Because I knew I had just become part of something I would never escape. I stood frozen in the middle of the gas station, staring at the phone in my hand. "Now it's your turn." I read it once. Then again. The words didn't change. I looked up at the other me, the one standing by the backroom door. He was watching me, waiting, like he had been through this before, like he already knew what I was about to do. I swallowed hard. My turn for what? He didn't answer. He just stepped aside, gesturing toward the open door. The back room. The place I wasn't supposed to go. I took a shaky breath. Then, slowly, I stepped inside. The air changed the second I crossed the threshold. It was thick, heavy, like I had just stepped underwater. The lights flickered, dim, sickly yellow, barely illuminating the room. And the walls. They weren't the same. No metal shelves. No storage crates. Just old concrete. Stained. Cracked. And in the center of the room, a chair. One chair. Facing the wall. I licked my lips. "What is this?" The other me didn't answer. He just raised a hand and pointed at the chair. My breath came in shallow gasps. I looked around the room, searching for anything familiar. A way out. A clue. Something. Then, my phone buzzed again. Another text. This one longer. "Every station needs a clerk. There must always be someone to watch the doors, to ring up the customers, to make sure everything runs the way it's supposed to. You were chosen. Now sit down." I read it twice. Shook my head. No, this isn't happening. I turned to leave, took one step, and slammed into something solid. The door was gone. The other me was gone. I was alone, trapped, and the only thing in the room was the chair. I forced myself to take slow, steady breaths. I needed to think. This place had rules, patterns. Someone had worked here before me, and before them, someone else. I walked toward the chair, slow, hesitant. The closer I got, the worse the air felt. Then I saw something. Something scratched into the floor beneath it. Words. Faint. Desperate. "Do not sit." I felt my stomach twist. I reached out, running my fingers over the letters. The grooves were deep, like someone had carved them with their bare hands. My phone buzzed again. "Sit down." I stepped back, shook my head. No, I'm not playing this game. The air shuddered. A low, humming noise filled the room. The kind you feel more than hear. And then, the door returned. I spun around, heart hammering. It was there, slightly open. A way out. I bolted for it, grabbed the handle, yanked it open, and everything was wrong. The store wasn't normal anymore. The shelves were empty. The fridges were dark. The security monitors showed static. And the doors, the ones leading outside, they weren't there. Like the world beyond the gas station had ceased to exist. I stepped forward, my breath shallow. And then, the door behind me slammed shut. I turned. The back room was gone. In its place was the counter, the register, and standing behind it was another me, wearing my uniform, smiling, waiting. I staggered back. No, this isn't. The other me tilted his head. His eyes were too sharp, too knowing. "You should start your shift," he said. I shook my head. "I don't work here anymore." He just kept smiling. Then he lifted a hand and pointed at my chest. I frowned, looked down, and my breath caught. I was wearing the uniform, the one I had quit, the one I had walked away from. Only now, I couldn't take it off. My phone buzzed. Another text. "Your shift has begun." The chime over the door rang. I snapped my head up, and they walked in. The customers. The ones who weren't human. The woman in the red hoodie. The man in the gray suit. The smiling one. All of them. And behind them, more figures, standing just beyond the flickering lights. Watching. Waiting. My fingers clenched into fists. I turned to the other me. "What happens if I don't do it?" His smile widened. Then, in a voice not quite mine, he whispered, "Then you become one of them." I can't leave. I know that now. This place, this gas station, it doesn't just exist in one world. It's a doorway, a liminal space, a place where the rules of reality break down. And every gas station needs a clerk, someone to keep the store running, someone to watch the doors, someone to make sure the customers get what they came for. So here I am. I scan their items. I take their money. I don't ask questions. I don't look at them too long. And no matter what, I never, ever sit in the chair. I've stopped trying to leave. The gas station won't let me. Every time I step outside, I find myself back at the register. No matter how fast I run, no matter how many times I try. This place it bends time. It loops reality. And I am its clerk. The customers come and go. The woman in the red hoodie. The man in the gray suit. They buy things, but they never eat, never drink, never leave with their purchases. They just repeat the same motions over and over, like actors trapped in a scene that never ends. And me? I'm just part of the script. Then one night I noticed him, a man in a torn blue jacket. He came in around 2 a.m., pacing the aisles like he was lost. When I asked if he needed help, he just stared at me. His face was pale. His eyes were hollow. And when he finally spoke, his voice was hoarse. "What year is it?" I frowned. "What?" His hand shook. "Please. What year is it?" I hesitated. "It's 2025. The color drained from his face. Then he whispered, No, that's not right." I felt my stomach twist. "Sir, are you okay?" His breathing quickened. He stumbled back, shaking his head. "I only stopped for gas. It was 1997. It was..." And then the lights flickered. The man froze. And when the lights came back on, he was gone. But his reflection was still in the fridge glass, standing there, watching me. That night, I checked the security footage. I rewound to 2 a.m., watched as the man in the blue jacket walked inside, watched as he paced the aisles, watched as he spoke to me. But when the lights flickered, the footage cut to static. And when it returned, the store was empty, like he had never been there at all. My phone buzzed. A text. No number. No contact name. Just 4 words. "You are almost ready." I felt sick. I didn't reply. Didn't sleep. Didn't blink. Because for the first time, I understood. This place doesn't just trap people. It erases them. It absorbs them. And one day, it will do the same to me. The next night, I clocked in like always. The doors opened. The customers came and went. Everything felt normal. Too normal. Like the station was waiting. Then, at exactly 3:33 a.m., the lights flickered. The automatic doors slid open, and someone new walked in. Not the woman in red. Not the man in the gray suit. Not any of the others. It was me. The other me walked slowly, his hands in his pockets. His expression was calm. His uniform was cleaner, like he had already been here for years. He stopped in front of the counter, looked at me with sad eyes. Then, in my own voice, he said, "It's time." I shook my head. No, I'm not." But he just smiled. Not mocking, not threatening, just tired. Like he understood. Like even me once. "You don't have a choice," he said softly. The store shuddered. The shelves stretched. The air hummed. And then, he reached out his hand. And I took it. I don't remember what happened next. Just darkness. And a faint, buzzing sound. Like whispers just beyond my hearing. And when I opened my eyes, I was standing outside the gas station. The parking lot was empty. The sky was gray. And, through the glass doors, I could see someone standing behind counter, wearing my uniform, scanning items, ringing up customers. But it wasn't me. It was him, the other me. And when I pressed my hand to the glass, he didn't look up, didn't acknowledge me. Because I was gone, I walked to my car, sat in the driver's seat. My phone was gone. My wallet was gone. My reflection in the mirror, gone. I checked my driver's license. The name wasn't mine. The photo wasn't mine. I turned the key in the ignition. The engine rumbled to life. The gas tank was full, and in the cup holder, a receipt for 1 bottle of water, dated 1955. I stared at it, heart pounding. Then slowly, I pulled out of the parking lot and drove. And as I did, the gas station faded, like it had never been there at all. I don't know how long I drove, but eventually, I stopped at another gas station, a different one. I stepped inside. A clerk stood behind the counter, young, tired, just like I had been. He didn't look at me, didn't acknowledge me, because he couldn't see me. I stepped closer, and as I did, a text buzzed on his phone. I looked over his shoulder, at the screen, a message from an unknown number, and it said, "It's your turn now. The end."